Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Monday Musings, Danny's SportsWrap on the Reasonably Irreverent Commentary podcast series, and that series includes a whole lot of things. Thirsty Thursdays, Kansas City Profiles Fridays, Danny and Tim's Music Scene every other week, our new podcast series with my wife called Reconcilable Differences. And I will start off today, before we get to resumptions of play and the times that we live in and things that are important in the sports world and things that are important outside the sports world, with a little something to make you feel a little bit better on this Monday, because I will guarantee you that you had a better weekend than I did. And we will cover this more fully on the next edition of Reconcilable Differences with Danny and Jane, because this involves the both of us and what was supposed to be a lovely anniversary weekend for us. Our 18th anniversary was to be spent with our first little trip away from Kansas City since the coronavirus started. And we were going to spend evening in the little town of Council Grove, Kansas, where we had stayed last year for what was supposed to be the Symphony of the Flint Hills. We discovered an Airbnb property we liked, and we figured this would be a nice getaway. We were going to go by way of Manhattan, Kansas, where there's a lighting store where my wife likes to purchase some lighting, and we need something replaced, so we're going to go through Manhattan, have a little lunch, and go on to Council Grove and spend a beautiful Saturday evening. Well, just outside of Topeka, a light came on my car that I had never seen before in the 6 years that I've had it. My car is over 100,000 miles now, so things are going to happen, and it said Alt Oil Temp. I believe that was correct. Never seen it before. So I just casually mentioned to my wife that she should check the manual. It said we should immediately pull over to the side of the road until the light went off. Well, it did, but feeling like maybe that wasn't enough and just not getting up and starting to drive again, I called the people at Olathe Subaru, the fine people in their service department. I've dealt with them for years. They're great people. And so I spoke with Brian there, and he said, in no uncertain terms should you drive that car. And so there we are, right at the toll gate at Topeka. Basically, it looks like perhaps our weekend is shot, but you never know. We've got to get the thing towed. We'll take it back to Olathe. Maybe we'll be there. We'll get a loaner. Maybe we'll still go. So anyway, we're waiting for the tow truck to come, and my wife has to use the restroom. So she goes up to a little building where next to the toll booth and is looking around for somebody so that maybe she can get access to that because there's no other restroom around. Well, a lady notices her and kind of startles my wife, who was peering inside, and she pivots around, steps off of a step, and badly sprains her ankle. I mean, badly. In fact, she's going to the doctor today. There may be a break there. So her ankle is swelling. It's 95 degrees. We're waiting for the tow truck, and our weekend indeed ended up being shot. We were towed back to Olathe. The ankle was in bad shape. No fun was going to be had, and so we will soon, maybe next weekend, maybe in a couple of weekends, be returning to Council Grove, Kansas to really celebrate our anniversary. But for this weekend, this series of third world problems, which really in the grand context of things in the past might have seemed like a complete abject disaster, but with all the things that are going on with other people and the situation in this country, it perhaps put that in a little bit of context and perhaps made it seem a little bit more of something that we can laugh about down the road than the infuriating thing that it was at the time. Well, there are things infuriating, things challenging, things optimistic that are coming. The PGA Tour will return this week. Other leagues seem to be on the path to return to play. The Premier League starts back up in England in soccer on Wednesday. So there's all kinds of things to talk about, but I figured you'd like to lighten the load a little bit and know that maybe even if you burnt your finger while grilling this weekend or you had a flat tire, that your weekend in all likelihood was better than mine. But of course, in the grand scheme of things, even that isn't that important. So, a real sports wrap with real sports and real other things comes your way next on the Reasonably Irreverent podcast. We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And, Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
Hi, this is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery. Thank you, Kansas City, for supporting all the local restaurants during this time of crisis. Starting Thursday, May 21st, the 23rd Street Brewery will be open from 11 to 9 for carry-out and delivery service, and 4 to 9 for dine-in and patio service, if you can believe that. We're open. During this phase, we will adhere to the Douglas County recommendations for restaurants, and please see our website or our Facebook page for details. Most importantly, we want all of our guests and staff to stay safe, and together we will all get through this.
My friends at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture are among the most accomplished and trusted clinics in the nation. Only one clinic has been rated in the top 5 in all 3 categories of chiropractic care, acupuncture, and rehabilitation, and that clinic is ASFCA. They have locations in Olathe, Overland Park, Prairie Village, Belton, and Lee Summit. Doctors Brad and Christina Woodle and their accomplished team of doctors and therapists will treat you like family, for the simplest of injuries to the most complicated conditions to avoid surgery. Whether you are seeking treatment for an injury or just looking to stay healthy and fit, this is the place for you. And it's been the place for me for almost 2 years now. I've been a strenuous daily exerciser for years, and as time goes on, that takes its toll. But regular appointments at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture have helped keep me ticking on, and even as the years pile up, their regular care has allowed me to keep to my regimen and feel great. If you want to feel the same, give them a call or visit them at asfca.com/Danny. They accept all insurances and are open Monday through Saturday, and make sure to mention that Danny Clinkscale recommended Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back to Monday Musings, Danny's Sports Wrap. And for a long, long time now, the Sports Wrap has been about a lot more than sports, and it continues to be that way as we've kind of moved from one national obsession to another while the previous obsession is still in place. But first of all, I know that we've established that your weekend was very likely better than mine, but I hope it was a good weekend also, and that you had yourself a nice time despite the stultifying temperatures and humidity and such. We're about to get a reprieve from that. As far as the sports world is concerned, it was almost completely intertwined with the protest issues around the country, and as we have moved along, and we're about 10 days in now, the protests have indeed morphed to almost completely peaceful. And both sides probably, if you want to call them sides, the police side and the protester side, probably deserve some credit for this. I think a lot of the people who were not serious about protesting, were just out there to create mayhem and or loot and or steal, have been weaned out, and they have wearied of this particular process or felt like they perhaps could not take advantage of it anymore. And we are down to people who really truly believe in what they are marching for and raising their voices for. And on the other side, I think police did modify some of their behavior at the outset and realized that it was ineffective and maybe not necessary to begin with. So we are seeing peaceful protests led many times by athletes, led many times by mayors, led other times by police chiefs, and who are taking part of it. So the real message is being put out there. But I would say if this whole process is a marathon, and certainly it is. It's a marathon of hundreds of years, but in this particular case, our most recent case, if this is a marathon, then we're in about mile 2, because as far as the sports world is concerned, which we'll somewhat try to keep this protest issue focused on here on the Sports Wrap, we have so many miles to go as far as how this issue is perceived, where it takes us, what kind of actions result from it, if any. I think there'll be some. I think what we all are hearing now is that people are hearing. And if they didn't hear at first, then they're adjusting their stance, from Drew Brees to the Iowa football program, all across the board. And so a weekend where the domination of the message was the things that many people think the right things to hear. But the people who don't necessarily agree with this, who are focusing on the looting, who don't even really perhaps hear the issue, even still, they hear the issue, but it doesn't resonate with them, they're being quiet right now. And in the sports world, we are going to see games start to trickle into play, but we are not going to see fans. And what we are going to see is various forms of protest, and in all likelihood, we're going to see kneeling during the national anthem. Well, that kneeling during the national anthem, or wearing a shirt that says "I can't breathe," or "Black Lives Matter," or things like that, are going to come in empty stadiums. So there's not going to be the initial, perhaps visceral reaction of booing or cheering, or we won't get an indication of that. It's going to have to come through social media, through media coverage, through op-ed pieces, through things like that, on both sides of the issue. And what we saw this weekend in total was the NFL players releasing a video just as the weekend was beginning, Roger Goodell making a statement which all but said that the players pretty much would be allowed to kneel. He didn't say that specifically. He didn't address the anthem, but he did say that peaceful protest will be something that will be embraced by the National Football League. That, of course, would eventually lead to a tweet from the President of the United States, who apparently in his mind still feels that standing against the kneeling during the national anthem and issues about the flag are still a winning strategy for him. Whether or not that is the case, doesn't seem like maybe it's the case, but that remains to be seen. But in his mind, this particular issue still is one that will resonate with his base, at the very least, and maybe with people who he is trying to move toward his base. And we don't want to talk about politics, and we don't want to talk about the election in the fall, but these things can't be ignored, and they're intertwined. They're completely intertwined. And it's on multiple levels. Drew Brees went from somebody who was almost completely on board with everything the President of the United States was tweeting to tweeting back at him that he completely disagreed with it. And the President of the United States was imploring him to go back to his original stance, and that just wasn't going to happen, at least now. Drew Brees is probably the poster child right now for somebody who, at least by his public statements, went from one position almost completely to another one. That's the type of reaction, that's the type of change that is being sought. Now, that's just one small example, one person, and will it resonate with the business community, with the legal community, with the police community, with all the things that will make the Black Lives Matter movement, the police brutality issue, and everything else? Will the change come in actual real terms? And I think a lot of people probably who are viewing this and are either making their mind up, are thinking that they are going to stick with the position that they feel like this issue was overblown and overstated. Will those people change their mind? Will they continue to be quiet? And what will happen when fans start to come back to the stands? And it resonates right here in Kansas City almost completely, because it would seem quite likely that the most popular athlete that maybe this community has ever seen is pretty likely to take a knee, I would say. And that certainly would not go well with a quarterback a few years ago who was a good quarterback, not a great one, who already had established himself as someone who does checks about every single box that you could possibly check as far as being a community leader, franchise leader, all over the place as far as being a business spokesperson. And he has incredible importance and resonance in this community. And will a segment of that community silently, vocally, or otherwise turn against Patrick Mahomes? Or will he have the kind of impact that Colin Kaepernick did not have, and it was completely shut down? The NFL owners have not really spoken yet. Roger Goodell has spoken, but the owners have not spoken. Many of these owners were just flat out dismissive of this particular issue the last time around, and they felt like they had the court of public opinion on their side. And, in fact, they likely did. But has the court of public opinion switched through this process enough? It's never going to switch completely. It's never even going to switch maybe to a completely dramatic fashion. But has it switched enough so that the owners realize that it's bad business this time around to say that the players can't silently protest, when before they felt very strongly that it was bad business to allow the players to do that, and unilaterally said that they couldn't do it? And perhaps early indications are that there has been that kind of change. But as I said, we are just at the second mile of a marathon where people are making their stands, making their statements, and a lot of people are just standing back and soaking it in and waiting. And we've got a tremendous amount of time to go because, as I said, games are going to start slowly. We'll talk about that in the second segment. But these games are going to be played with stadiums empty. There's not going to be instant reaction to it in person. Of course, millions of people will be viewing this on television, and it will be discussed and it will be talked about, but you won't get that instant reaction to what is going on. And in the end, I think a lot of people also are maybe a bit confused as to exactly what tangible things can be put in place. You start to have issues like body cameras for police. All right, there's a specific instance. Will there be legislation put in place? Will there be changes in police protocol? Will there be other things that are put in place? Will monies be donated or appropriated in a different way? One issue that's being talked about now is defunding police departments. That doesn't seem like the greatest idea in the world to me. Now, maybe the way that those funds are appropriated should be discussed, but people are going to raise all kinds of issues, some that they think strongly of that would be a good idea, and that many others will think will be a bad idea. But people have to come up with some tangibles, or a large majority of people who are viewing this will be saying to them, what exactly are you asking for? We know in general what is being asked for. More racial tolerance, more hearing of the issues, less profiling. All those particular issues are not vague, but they are grand issues. They are overarching issues. They're not specific issues. And one by one, we probably have to get to more specifics in this situation. And I will repeat, probably for the umpteenth time, that we are just at the start, and we also really haven't heard all the voices of this. Really, the President of the United States is probably the one right now who is sounding the call on the other side, as it were. And most people are being quiet right now if they do agree with that particular sentiment, like they were not quiet back in 2016 and 2017. This all comes in the context of the fact that we are starting to return to play, and one of the leagues that is dragging its feet considerably and may be the biggest sports loser in this entire thing is Major League Baseball. We'll talk about all the returns to play that are coming. The PGA Tour returns this week, the Premier League in soccer returns this week, and other leagues are moving more and more towards playing in empty stadiums, and again, in a context that we've never seen before. First with a worldwide pandemic, and then with a culture-changing protest movement coming simultaneously and one after the other. No matter how anybody feels about the particular issues, the virus, it's 100%. Everybody agrees that they're against that. But it's created national trauma for quite a long time now. And the games will be coming back, and we'll check that out coming up next.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson and Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that. And moving on in age, as we all are, what do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. If they just contact me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Welcome back to the Sports Wrap, and to wrap up the first part of what we were talking about, you have to check off a lot of the boxes that came over the weekend, and we're going to start to talk about play here. But from college sports, where Missouri and their football players got a tremendous amount of coverage and notoriety for their march from their campus to the county courthouse to register to vote. We see other issues across college football, programs being inspected closely, charges of racial intolerance at the University of Iowa. In NASCAR, obviously a bastion of sort of old-fashioned virtues, perhaps. Jimmy Johnson and many other drivers put together a video somewhat like the NFL. There was a moment of silence there. U.S. Soccer is looking to potentially rescind a ruling that they made that players had to stand during the national anthem, one that was basically in response to Megan Rapinoe kneeling during an anthem. She eventually would decide to obey this particular stricture, but they perhaps will be voting against that. There is another tangible sign of something completely different. So all these things went down over the weekend as we now move into an area where sports are returning and protocols are being discussed and how people are going to return to play. On Wednesday, the Premier League in soccer will return with no fans, as there'll be a couple games on Wednesday and they will start to play. You can see the model from the Bundesliga, which has been successful. Empty stadiums in various varieties, some completely empty and quiet. some using piped-in sound, which seems to work a little bit better to me. And it'll be interesting to see how the Premier League handles that. One of their franchises, Brighton, is going to have cardboard cutouts of fans. I saw that today. But whether the imitation chants and reactions of the fans, which some of the German soccer league stadiums have used in pretty good effect, in my mind, will be in place there. So that's Wednesday. Thursday, the PGA Tour returns to play without Tiger Woods. That's probably the biggest news for some people. Tiger perhaps was expected to play, but he did not. He just quietly didn't sign up by the deadline of Friday to play. He's hardly ever played Colonial, which is this week's tournament, the Charles Schwab Challenge, to be official, but a long-time Colonial. And he's only played that one time. It's a very tight golf course, probably doesn't fit his particular eye. Hey, we're talking about sports there, see? It actually happens. That will be obviously without fans. There's some talk that the Memorial, which I think is the 5th tournament to be played, will have fans on a restricted basis. That's the kind of testing that we're probably going to see. How you're going to handle limited fan bases, but for the first 4 PGA tournaments, that will not be in place. How will the coverage be altered? How will it look on TV in a setting where you're not just watching 4 guys out there playing, you're watching an actual golf tournament with multiple shots, actual competition, a winner at the end, and will it ring a little hollow? It'll be interesting to see. So there are the successes that we see. Leagues actually returning to play. NASCAR in action, soccer over in Europe in action, soccer in Europe getting into action this week. MLS full team training started today, in fact, and they are working towards the Orlando model. Orlando, Florida, and that particular area is going to be the epicenter of the sports world in many regards. The NBA, their owners on Thursday and players on Friday, did approve the 22-team setup with a quick, limited amount of regular season play to get to the playoff structure. In many ways, it was kind of rigged up so that some of the star players who would have been the outside looking in, if they just started play with 16 playoff teams, were in place to give the opportunity for some of those teams to have a long shot chance and they get some more big stars into the mix as they return to play. NHL has protocols out there, but no real specifics as of yet. And, of course, what haven't I mentioned yet? Major League Baseball. All was eerily quiet over the weekend. Both sides trotted out plans last week. Each side rejected them. And in the players' standpoint, they said they are not going to counter-proposal. Major League Baseball, as an entity itself, does have one hammer, however small, and they can say, you've got to play this amount of games. They can unilaterally put that in place. Players, I guess, could just not show up and defy that, but legally they would be breaking a contract that they signed in March, the one that had prorated pay. As we view it, everybody continues to say that the two sides will work it out, and we just keep going along, and the two sides are getting nowhere near working it out. Saw Buster Olney this morning on ESPN, and he said this side must do this and this side must do that, but then when asked if they would do that, he really couldn't be optimistic about it. And in my mind, this probably is going to be in the laps of the owners. I think the players are pretty much bunkered in. Yes, they might move some a little, but if baseball is going to be played anytime soon, I think it's going to take a big move by the owners, and we'll see if they're willing to make it. I think that the sport is in some real peril of real damage. And there was a quote out there of an agent saying, it seems like everybody has forgotten what happened back in 1994 and 1995 when the sport took an incredible body blow that really only took the juiced up home run battle in 1999 to kind of bring the sport back. And in some people's mind, you still hear people say, you still to this day hear people say that they never quite have returned to baseball and embraced it as much as they did before the strike and the World Series being lost in 1994. And it is pretty darn easy to be pessimistic. I love baseball. It still is my favorite sport. I like all sports. I've embraced new sports as I've grown older. I've become a big soccer fan. I wouldn't even have watched a NASCAR race except for the Daytona 500 when I was young. I'll do more of that now. There's all kinds of things that change in the sports world, but one thing that hasn't for me is that I love the daily drumbeat of baseball. And for that sport to really work itself towards irrelevance, and that's a little strong, but work itself toward being a completely regional sport with not much national impact. It has been easily passed by the NFL and the NBA. I don't think that's changing anytime soon. But being a strong third or a 2A to the NBA, at least, is where baseball can strive to go. But this particular situation can be so incredibly damaging, and we're in a situation where that absolutely can happen. And you just sometimes shake your head at these things. And in the context of where we are now with the coronavirus and with the protest movement, people being hard-headed in a labor negotiation seems ridiculous. And in fact, it is ridiculous. And it will seem even more ridiculous to people viewing the situation in this current context where real-life issues, life and death issues, literally are on the table, and people are quibbling over, say, the equivalent of $10 million per franchise or an average of $500,000 for players or something like that. And, you know, those are huge figures to you and I, but not in the grand scheme of this gigantic business of baseball. And baseball also is going to be played, maybe, or not played, in a context where all kinds of sports are going to be going on at the time when baseball usually had the playing field to itself. And if they're not there at all, that's just Armageddon-ish for the game of baseball. If soccer is being played, if the NBA is being played, if the NFL is looming, if golf is being played, and baseball is gone, done for the season, canceled, you really do just shake your head. As I started off this particular piece in talking about the calamities of my weekend, all this does become contextual. A lot of times when we talk about things in sports and, you know, real-life issues that pop up, everybody always says, well, this puts the real important things into context, and often it does. But those are usually smaller things or things that involve issues that are affecting one person or a family or whatever. We are seeing in this particular calendar year generational things that we're going to talk about from a virus that has killed thousands and thousands around the world and hundreds in our particular area, and then followed up by seeing incredibly inflamed reactions to social injustice in this community. These are historically significant things, and indeed that even puts it into greater context when your car conks out on the highway or your wife turns her ankle. And by the way, she's not doing all that well, but it's not a life or death issue. It's just a limping around the house issue. And these all do get into a certain context. It seems almost incredible that we are only really not even halfway through this particular year of 2020 yet, and it has been packed with all these important and significant issues, and so many are still to come. And many of those will involve the joy of returning to maybe going to a stadium or at least enjoying all our sports, and maybe volumes and volumes of them on television. Maybe also shaking our heads and being sad about losing baseball for a year. Continued discussion of very important issues. There's a national election at the end of the year still that will affect this nation for the next 4 years at the very least. What an incredible time it has been and will continue to be, and sports is always going to be part of it, but it seems a little bit of a smaller part. But in other ways, the way that sports has reacted to the virus, and then the way it will and is reacting to social injustice and protest, is shining an even bigger light on it. We care about sports so much in this country. We have such a varied sports culture. In other countries, one or two sports really, really dominate. And in our country, certainly the NFL is king, but we have tremendous interest in just a huge variety of sports. And that will be on display in full bloom as we move forward in 2020. Each week we get together on a Monday and discuss these issues, and we will continue to do so. And I have no real clear way to say which direction we're going in this regard, but it certainly has been interesting, and it will be enjoyable to balance the things that are so important and to return to enjoying and keeping score and watching people compete at the highest level and raise trophies and celebrate and maybe eventually hold parades, just think the last one of those that we were able to embrace as a nation was the NFL parade for the Kansas City Chiefs. And now, subsequently, we'll have the leader of that team as a very impactful figure in what we do going forward. All very fascinating. We'll continue to talk about it. We'll continue to talk about a variety of different things. And as I mentioned at the outset as well, on a completely comical level, Wednesday's podcast for the Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday is our reconcilable differences. And you'll be able to revisit the calamities that weren't really all that significant with my wife and I as well. So let's start off the week, look ahead, and we know it's going to be fascinating.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new. This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like the law offices of Kenneth McRae, developing a unique strategy for your family law case. Divorce can be civil law, not civil war.